Hey, good morning. And those of you who are worshiping with us at our other campuses, I am so pleased that this weekend we began our spring series. It's called Finding Hope in Family Conflict. And so let's begin with a hunting question. Okay, hands up. How many of you have been deer hunting at least one time in your life? Raise your hands high. Okay, keep your hands up if you love hunting. Okay, a few less. All right. I just saw someone hold his wife's hand up in the air. All right. Next question. How many of you go, no? The last thing I can think of that would be enjoyable is to arise at about 4:45 in the morning and sit beside some frozen field waiting for Bambi to walk into it. May I see your hands, please? Okay, and this divides the room. Today's story from the Bible is a bow hunting story. And for those of you that did not know there was a bow hunting story in the Bible, I just know for some of you, your confidence in Scripture just rocketed. Just knowing that that's there. But it is there. It's toward the beginning of our Bible, Genesis chapter 27. There is an elderly father. His name is Isaac. And because he is old, his sight is almost entirely gone. He is functionally blind. And he calls in his firstborn son, Esau, and gives these instructions. Here we go. Genesis 27, verse 2. Isaac said, I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your equipment. What equipment? Your quiver and bow. It's a bow hunting story. And go out into the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat so that I may give you my blessing before I die. You get the idea here. Dad is aging. He does not know when the time will come for him to pass. He wants to pass on the blessing to his son before he dies. Now, get your quiver, get your bow, out in the open country you go, and then shoot something, clean something, cook something, bring me this tasty meal just the way I like it, and then I will give you the blessing. Of course, we've stepped into the middle of a story. Every family comes with history. And every family comes with baggage, except of course for yours. Let's unpack some of theirs. And let's begin with Grandpa. Grandpa, guy by the name of Abraham. Early in our Bible, the voice of the Creator speaks into the life of this guy, Abraham. I will make you a great nation and I will bless you. I will make your name great and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. Whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples of the earth will be blessed through you. Any word that kind of pops out at you 5 times in those 2 verses, it is the word bless or blessing. I'm gonna bless you. I'm gonna bless you. I choose you for a life of blessing. I'm gonna bless the world through you. Those who bless you, I will bless. You will be a blessing to other people. I will surround you with this idea of blessing. Listen, it's wonderful. Anything you want in return? Yeah, like leave everything. Abraham lives over here, a place called Ur of the Chaldees near the Persian Gulf area, and he migrates north and then south, spends some time camped out here in a place called Haran. Remember the name of that place? And then finally ends up in the land of promise, the promised land, Canaan. All right. As near as I can tell by my math, about a 1,000-mile journey around, about 500 miles from Canaan here back up to this place called Haran. And there Abraham moves. He spends the majority of his life learning to trust this God that has called him. He said, listen, leave your people, leave your family, leave your family's wealth, leave your family's God. Trust me and follow me. And Abraham actually does it. Now, that's Grandpa. Now, he has a son, Isaac. Isaac is the dad. And you would find this in Genesis chapter 25. It's interesting. Isaac planted crops in that land, and that same year reaped, and we get a numeric here, reaped 100-fold. This is a massive bumper crop because the Lord blessed him. And you get this idea that this blessing that was on Abraham has now come down to the son by the name of Isaac. So there's this transmission of the blessing through the family line from Abraham and now to Isaac. Isaac has a wife, her name is Rebecca. She is expecting and she feels like there is a war going on inside her during this pregnancy. This is pre-ultrasound days. She seeks God and says, what is happening here? Pre-ultrasound. This is the oracle that Rebecca receives. You are carrying twins. Twin boys are wrestling it out inside of you. Twin boys. And here was the oracle. And the older will serve the younger. Firstborn son is going to be subservient to the secondborn son. And these twins are born. Their names are Esau and Jacob. Esau is older. Esau is the firstborn by minutes, by seconds. Literally, Jacob is hanging on to his brother's foot as Esau is born. Jacob might mean heel or heel grabber, right? Jacob is born seconds, minutes after his brother Esau. You have the firstborn and you have the secondborn. Now, these boys are nothing alike. Nothing alike. I mean, in appearance, it says that Esau was born as just this hairy kid, and Jacob more smooth-skinned. Furthermore, Esau loved to hunt. And it says that Jacob, on the other hand, just liked to hanging out around the tents, taking care of the domesticated animals. But that question at the top of our conversation, how many of you enjoy hunting? And how many going, are you kidding me? Like 5 o'clock in the morning out beside some field? We have just described the difference between Esau and Jacob. Esau, hey, let's go out, spend 3 or 4 nights outside, living under the stars. And Jacob goes like, you mean sleeping on the ground? Like, are you kidding me? All right, also a difference between the boys. Isaac, he loves Esau. Mom loves Jacob. And so there's this family favoritism thing that is going on. And when Isaac says, go out into the wild, kill some game, make that wonderful dish that I just love, kill it, clean it, cook it, bring it back, and I will give you the blessing. What he's describing is this, that this blessing that Abraham had would go through him down to his firstborn son, Esau. And off into the wild Esau goes. You need to know something, that this hunting trip will be the occasion of a series of events that will radically alter the destiny of this family. What unravels due to this hunting trip is a story of deception and deceit. What unravels is a situation of murderous rage. And you're going to have family members that will not talk to each other for decades because of what happens out of this story. So before we jump into it, I just want to acknowledge something together, and it's this, that family can be the greatest source of joy and the greatest source of blessing in our lives. And family can be one of the greatest sources of deep pain and deep disappointment. At the same time, growing up in a family, it can be that space where we first experience love, where we first experience security, where we first know that we belong. And family can be that same environment where we find ourselves misunderstood and deeply rejected in life. It is connection to those who are closest to us that have the possibility to bring us life's greatest joy and blessing, at the same time, life's deepest disappointment and life's greatest pain. Those who are closest to us can hurt us the most. This past week, received a note from a guy that attends our church, and he wrote about a season he passed through about 7 years ago. About 7 years ago, his mother committed suicide. His mom took her life. And then within a year, his wife bailed on their marriage. And there had been problems before that. He had seen this coming for a couple years, but it happened shortly after the time of his mom taking her own life. I just want you to read just a little part of the note with me here. It says, I've experienced intense grief, intense pain. I've died inside, as close as anyone can die emotionally, I did. Neck deep in the mud, suffocating in grief, fear, and what's the last word? Hopelessness. That word hopelessness is a scary word. What this guy in your church was describing is despair, which is different than disappointment. Because all of us experience disappointments in life, and they tend to come and go. No, despair is something different. Despair is a settled state. Despair, it camps out and unpacks its luggage in our lives. Despair sticks around, and despair is that place in life that we can get to where we find ourselves incapable of envisioning a hopeful future. That's what despair is. Despair is when you look down your future days and you simply cannot envision that you will ever laugh again, have joy again, or breathe again. Suffocating, what was it? Suffocating grief, suffocating fear, suffocating hopelessness. Listen, I have no idea the pain that you carry from your background, the misunderstandings, the abandonment, betrayal, desertion, or the challenges that you are experiencing right now. I'm just confident that there are those present today, and these are the best days you've ever experienced in your marriage or with your kids or with your folks, or you've reconciled with siblings. You've never seen better days. And I know at the same time that as I described, despair is that condition of an inability to envision a hopeful future. I just know that some of you were going, that's me, that's me, that's me. Jeff, right now I feel hopeless. We've titled our series very carefully. It's just called Finding Hope in Family Conflict. Our greatest desire, our greatest prayer, our greatest hope for you is that whatever you're traveling through, that you would once again be able to envision a hopeful future, that in this journey, you would learn to trust God and know God. And even if it feels like you're on the front end of hope, that God would be able to reawaken dreams and that God would resurrect hope in your life. So let's just dive in to the hunting trip. Off he goes into the wild with quiver and bow, kill it, clean it, cook it, bring back the meal to dad and get the blessing. Part number one of our story of 3 parts. Part number one is the plot. Mom overhears this. Isaac, his favorite is Esau. Mom, Rebecca, her favorite is Jacob. And now she runs to Jacob and said, I just heard your dad. He sent Esau off into the wild in order to track down some wild game, shoot it, clean it, cook it, bring it, and get the blessing. Son, there's just a little small something I need to ask you to do. Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Follow my directions carefully. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats so I can prepare some tasty food for your father just the way he likes it. This lady thinks that she can replicate venison stew. I know the herbs and spices. I know the herbs that your brother uses. I'm gonna make this up. Now, then you can take it to your father to eat, that he may give you his blessing before he dies. While Esau's gone, you sneak in there. He's blind, he won't know it's you, and he will give you the blessing. And Jacob's going like, okay, we got some problems here. I don't sound like Esau. I don't smell like Esau. He doesn't. And the blessing was kind of a hands-on type thing. If my dad touches me, I don't feel like Esau. I'm not hairy like he is. And so Jacob verbalizes this. He said, Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, but my brother Esau is a hairy man while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him. Yeah, you think? And would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. My brother Esau is a hairy guy. If my dad touches me, this whole thing's gonna backfire and it's gonna unravel. Believe it or not, this is over 3,000 years ago, and yet archaeologists have discovered pictures of Esau going way back. Okay, maybe it wasn't quite that bad, but this is one hairy dude, right? And he goes, this is never gonna work. I don't smell like him, I don't sound like him, I don't feel like him. And your mom says, listen, just do what I'm telling you to do and let the curse fall on me. Let the curse fall on me. So Jacob runs out to the flock really quick because this guy can hunt really fast. You don't know when he's coming back. They kill a couple goats. She's got the stew started. And then it says she went through the closet and she got Esau's best clothes to dress Jacob in. And so she's got Esau's best outfit. Whew. Now we've got the aroma thing covered because these clothes, they smell like the great outdoors. Now the problem with touch, the goats that have been killed to make this tasty meal, she makes some goat skin hand coverings. So just in case dad gets close and touches him, he can pull this thing off. And then she mixes the herbs with the goat meat. She thinks she can replicate this savory meal that her husband loves. And Jacob is like, this is never gonna work. This is never gonna work. This is never gonna work. Part one is the plot. Part two is the impersonator. And off he goes into his father's presence with the meal. I find the story very interesting. He went to his father and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I've done what you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing." Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "The Lord your God gave me success," he lied. And Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you're really my son Esau or not." So Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. "May the Lord..." "Are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "I am." He lied again. Then he said, "My son, bring me some of the game to eat so that I might give you my blessing." So Jacob brought it to him and he ate, and he brought some wine and he drank. That might help. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son. Come here, my son, and kiss me." And Jacob draws near and he bends down. And as he bends down, his father takes in the Esau aroma, the smell of the clothes, the smell of the great outdoors. He says, the smell of my son Esau, the smell of the open country, the great outdoors. May God bless you with the heavens dew. May he bless you with the earth's riches. May he give you an abundance of grain and an abundance of wine. May nations serve you. May peoples bow down to you. May you be Lord over your brothers. And may your mother's sons bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed. And may those who bless you be blessed. And it was out and it was irrevocable. And this is what has just happened to the family tree. The blessing is flowing from Abraham to Isaac and to Jacob. And right about now, Esau is on his way in. He found it, he killed it, he cleaned it, he cooked it. And now he's bringing in this venison stew for his father, that tasty meal that his father loves. As Jacob exits his father's presence and as Esau is about to come in, I want to just press pause for a second to take a moment to look at something that's happening in the story. That if you read it really fast, you might miss, but if you read it slowly, just absorbing it, you would see that something pops up once, twice, 3 times, 5 times, 6 times. It occurs so many times, it's like the story is screaming at you to pay attention to it. And it's that element of Isaac's love for this tasty food. He tells his son Esau, go out to the country, kill something, make me that tasty meal that I love. And then there's mom, get a couple goats. I know how to make that tasty meal that your father loves. It's like 6 times there's this tasty meal. And I think 3 of the times it says, just the way he liked it. It's interesting. It's like 6 times in the passage, this tasty meal is mentioned. And the reader is led to believe that the most important thing going on in Isaac's life is lunch. Like at the center of his life is venison stew. Which you go, well, okay, venison stew is good. Yeah, but the tragedy here is that what's happening in the story is that God is selecting a family through which to give his blessing. Something powerful and something profound is taking place. And Abraham spends a lifetime trying to figure out who is this God that I'm following and why is it that he should be trusted? And then this is transmitted to Isaac, and it appears that Isaac's greatest question in life is, when can I get my hands on that tasty stew again? I just love it, love it, love it. This is what the reader's supposed to pick up. In fact, Rebecca, her favorite son is Jacob. Isaac, his favorite son is Esau. Why? Well, the two just kind of connected. No, there's a reason why Esau is his favorite son. It's a couple chapters before in verse 25. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau. But Rebekah loved Jacob. Rebekah loved Jacob, no explanation. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau. It feels like a very affection for this son, his now favored son, is because this guy kills it, cleans it, cooks it, and brings him this favorite meal. We're watching here a very profound and powerful movement of God in a family, and this guy's, what his life seems to center around is venison stew. Does that seem a little pathetic to you? Okay, small question. And what does your life revolve around? We tend to have an organizing factor for our life. Life tends to revolve around something. And listen, it can be anything. It can be golf. It can be our next ball game. It can be the next party, the next restaurant, the next adventure, the next trip, the next vacation. It can be the next microbrewery. It can be earning money, saving money, spending money. It can be my next sale, my next deal, my next promotion, my next purchase, my next home renovation. It can be any number of things, but life seems to have this organizing factor that you kind of drill down to the core and you say, you know something? It seems to me like all the stuff in my life tends to revolve around that. If you are insightful and if you are honest, most of us can go to the core and say, it seems that in this season of my life, this seems to be at the center. Now, the Isaac family, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they lived long before the time of Jesus. Long before Jesus comes. We have the privilege of being after the time of Jesus. After the time of Jesus, there's a term that we use. It is very powerful, but it can get kind of worn out. And when powerful terms get worn out, they become cliche. Let me drop this powerful term on you. The powerful term is a Christ-centered life. And again, this can become cliche. A Christ-centered life. By Christ-centered life, what we're describing there is that at the center, the hub at the center, and kind of other miscellaneous things revolve around it, but at the center is not an achievement or is not a meal, is not another person, is not a house or a vacation. At the center is the person of Christ. When we talk about a Christ-centered life, I would love to convince you of the fact that he belongs there. He belongs at the center by virtue of 2 roles that he plays. First, as creator, and second, as rescuer. Using some shorthand, Jesus deserves the role for the believer. Jesus deserves the role at the center of my life because he made me and because he bought me. When I place Christ at the center, I'm basically just putting him in that position that he deserves to be in because he made me and because he bought me, his role as creator and his role as rescuer. So I know how much you love audience participation time, so here goes. I just love you to repeat some expressions with me, 3 of them, okay? The first is, he made me. So ready? He made me. The second is, he bought me. Ready? He bought me. And the third, a little bit longer, he belongs at the center. Ready? He belongs at the center. Now, the 3 of them together in unison. He made me, he bought me, he belongs at the center. My friends, I think much of the work in following Jesus, I think much of the work is the daily work of pulling Jesus from the edge back to the center of our life and pushing out the random miscellaneous stuff that has somehow taken hold of the center spot. I think much of the daily work of following Jesus is the daily work of seeing that he's drifted from the center, pulling him back to the center. See, because at best, there's this other stuff here. My work, my meals, my house, this other stuff, these serve as blessings through which I experience, through which I enjoy him, and through which I experience and taste his enjoyment of me. But it's the daily work of making sure that he's at the center and these other stuff, they stay out at the edge where they belong. I think this is the daily work of what it means to be a follower of the Christ. At least that would be toward the top of the list, is repositioning him on a regular basis toward the center, because there's this drift that takes place, not just every few years, but every few days, right? Every few minutes. So I just got to ask you again, what's at the center? Life will revolve around something. What's at the center? Do you know what's at the center? As we read the Isaac story, it becomes clear to the reader what's center of Isaac's life has become lunch. It has become a craving for venison stew. That is now at the center of the chosen people, the person of promise. We're supposed to read that as a tragedy, that has occurred. But speaking of venison stew, here it comes. Isaac, in very short time, killed it, cleaned it, cooked it, and he's bringing this venison stew to his dad. And he goes, "Hey, Dad, sit up and eat the food that I may receive your blessing." And Isaac is like, "What?" His father asked him, "Who are you?" "I am your son," he answered, "your firstborn Esau." Isaac trembled violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came and I blessed him. And indeed, he will be blessed. That blessing, I can't take those words back. It's irrevocable. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out in a loud and bitter cry. Just, ah! And he said, "My father, bless me too. Bless me too. Me too, my father." And his dad goes, "I just gave the blessing away. I blessed him with the earth's dew and the earth's richness and an abundance of grain and an abundance of wine, and I made you subject to him. There's nothing left to give." And Esau is like, "Is there only one blessing?" I mean, literally, that's what he asks. Esau said to his father, "Do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father." Then Esau wept aloud. It is his future that is erasing here in front of his eyes. "Bless me too, give me something." And Isaac's blessing for Esau, "You will live far from the earth's dew. You will live far from the earth's richness. You will be subject to your brother and you will live by the sword. And a day will come when you will grow restless and you will throw his yoke from off of your shoulders." Well, they are the chosen family, so forgive and forget. Let bygones be bygones. We've seen the plot, we've seen the impersonator, and now it's time for the fallout. See, Esau, you look so discouraged. You look so disappointed. You look so down. Come on, look at the positive side. What you need to do here is to focus on your strengths. What is it you're really good at? Well, I'm good at killing things. I'm good at killing things. No. Yeah. Esau held a grudge against Jacob. This dude has a chip on his shoulder the size of Mount Everest because of the blessing his father had given to him. And he said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near, then I will kill my brother Jacob. Jacob's not the only one who can plan in advance here. The day that my dad is gone, Jacob will be gone too. He says this to himself, but apparently he says it out loud, and mom hears that he says this. It seems like mom hears a lot. She finds Jacob, her beloved son. She says, now then, my son, do what I say. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Remember the name of that place? Remember that was? Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides. And then you go spend some time with your uncle. Get out of here fast. And when your brother cools off a little bit, I'll send word to you and you can come back home. And Jacob, the word that's used there is flee. He takes off. He takes off from Canaan back to Haran. By my math, it's about a 500-mile hike. Some irony here is that the homebody has to leave home. The guy who loves the luxuries of being around the tent, he's on the run. The impression you get is he has a little more than a walking stick with him as he takes off. He is separated from the family's protection. He is separated from the family's wealth. And he's going to go north, and he is going to work for his uncle Laban, who is a conniving manipulator. Little bit of justice there. What goes around. Right. He never gets word from his mom. He will never see her again, and he will never see his dad again. And when he makes tracks south some 20 years later, Esau will come out to meet him. And he will have to try to reconcile with someone that he ripped off 20 years before. And Jacob, you go, I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to be separated from my mom. I didn't ask to be separated from my family's wealth. I didn't ask to be on the run. I'm the homebody, and now I'm fleeing and I'm sleeping out on the ground. I didn't ask for any of this, and he's right, he didn't. He didn't choose that. Something very important for us to remember, we get to choose our behavior. We don't get to choose the consequences of our behavior. We get to choose certain behavior in life. We don't get to choose the fallout. And sometimes we come up with these little scripts. Well, I'm gonna do this, and then they'll probably do this, and I'm gonna do this. Listen, we can have this script orchestrated. There is absolutely no guarantee that the other person will say the appropriate lines at the appropriate time, and they might be working on a completely different script than we're working off of. Remember that, we get to choose our behavior. We don't get to choose the consequences of our behavior. Parents of little kids, in their growing up years. Someone's like working like 80 hours a week. No, not because they have to support the family, but to build this monolith of a company or to make CEO or to make executive vice president. And they go, listen, I'm totally missing out on these kids now, but the day will come when we will connect. That's not always your choice. And later, when they're mostly grown, you make an attempt to connect, they can say, yeah, no thanks. We get to choose our behavior. We don't get to choose the consequences of our behavior. Remember that. If you're in middle school or high school and you are lying your head off about where you are, who you're with, and what you're doing, you can choose that. You don't get to choose when and how your parents figure out what's actually going on. And you don't get to choose this erosion of the heart when you wake up one day to discover that you have become a liar. And the roots of deceit are deeper than you would want them to be. We get to choose our behavior. We don't get to choose the consequences of our behavior. Remember that, because you say, well, I'm gonna leave their dad and hook up with this guy. I'm gonna leave their mom, I'm gonna hook up with her. And kids are resilient, they bounce back. You don't get to choose how rapidly they bounce back and how resilient they are. You don't get to choose the confusion that they can spiral into and for how long. You don't get to choose the resentments that they will carry into later life. We can choose our behavior, but if we think I get to write this script and I've got all of it scripted, you may script your behavior. You don't get to choose the fallout. You don't get to script the fallout. You can't orchestrate the fallout. And so as Jacob runs, as he flees for his life, it's possible for Jacob to say, I didn't choose this. And he's right. He just chose the behavior that set it off. This kid's got nothing. I mean, we get the impression that this man has little more than his walking stick and a few other possessions, separated from the family's wealth as he heads north to find Uncle Laban in this town of Haran. You say, oh, no, Jeff. He has the blessing. The blessing that started with Abraham that flowed through Isaac and is now with him. He has the blessing. Listen, he's got a spiritual endowment of his grandpa Abraham, but he's got none of the spiritual character of Abraham. He's got the spiritual promises of Abraham, but he doesn't have the spiritual journey of Abraham. I don't think Jacob knows God. I don't think Jacob knows what it's like to walk with God or to trust God. He has a spiritual heritage, but it is a spiritual heritage without spiritual experience. In fact, earlier in the story, it's that scene where he's bringing the food to his father Isaac so that he can get the blessing instead of his brother, and where his dad goes, how did you find the food so fast? How did you kill something, clean something, and cook something so fast? Remember Jacob's response? He said, the Lord your God gave me success. Anything in that sentence that interests you? The Lord your God gave me success. He doesn't say the Lord, our God. He doesn't say the Lord, my God. Yeah, your God gave me success. I don't think Jacob knows or trusts Grandpa's God. And I think the drama that unfolds in coming weeks of the story is this: how will the God of Abraham actually become the God of Jacob? As he has to journey, and as he has to struggle, and as he has to learn to trust. In fact, next weekend, Pastor Bob King speaks next weekend, and it's the next story in sequence. And it's literally God meets Jacob. God intercepts his trip as he's heading north to Haran to be with Laban. And God intercepts him, and it's like Jacob's baby steps in learning who this God is. But he doesn't know God. He doesn't trust God. He's got this spiritual lineage, this spiritual heritage, this spiritual history, no spiritual character, no spiritual journey of his own. And that, my friends, is about to begin. See, there's so many stories in the Bible. It's about how God chooses to bless people that are holy and honest and good. This isn't one of them. This is not one of them. This story, this type of story, is about God's gracious and persistent pursuit of an individual who's pretty clueless and just beginning to find their way. And this, my friends, we call grace. Grace is something born from the generous heart of God. It reflects the generosity of God, and it's something we do not earn and we do not deserve. As God tracks Jacob, he is not tracking Jacob because of his deep spiritual character. He is tracking Jacob in spite of its absence. And that and that we should find hopeful. Top of the conversation, I read a little bit of this message that I got, right? Guy at our church 7 years ago, mom takes her own life, wife leaves within the same year. A lot of healing, slow, gradual, persistent healing over the last 7 years. Completely different season right now. He's remarried, he has kids, he's just really experiencing a season of blessing. But before we read a second part of his email, I just want you to remember those early words 7 years ago. Suffocating in grief and in fear and in hopelessness. The second part of his note, but Jesus lifted me, now, not overnight, gradually, in spite of myself, and sometimes despite my deepest efforts to stay down, he lifted me. I still have pain, I still have scars, but I'm alive again. And the fog is gone. I love that. It's like I've experienced a resurrection in my spirit and the fog has dissipated. The resurrected Christ is in the business of making all things new. The resurrected Christ is in the business of resurrections. Now that was an expression that he used twice. It was an expression, he lifted me, and that was right out of last week's Easter message. We reference Psalm chapter 40, verse 2, where the songwriter, I believe it's King David, says, he lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He lifted me out of neck-deep mud. He lifted me out of the mud and gave me a new place to stand. And I would just say, may that be true for you. For those of you right now who are suffocating in grief, for those of you right now in a season of deep fear, incredible anxiety, and you said, dude, hopeless, despair, inability to envision a hopeful future, that's me. My deep prayer, my deep hope for you is that you experience once again, that you would experience trust and that you would experience hope. Even on the front edge where you would look down the next stretch of your life and say, I can begin to be hopeful that the fog will lift, that the Christ of resurrections could return my joy and could restore my laughter, and that I may stand among hundreds and thousands of others who would testify, and he lifted me. He lifted me too. Let me ask you to stand for closing prayer today here and at our other campuses as well. I get to pray for us as we move into our weeks, and I need to thank you. Thank you so much for being here this day, opening day of this conversation. And may our gracious God carry you as you move into your week. May he give you strength for another day. May he give you wisdom for another conversation. May he give you peace in the middle of the storm. And may he be pleased to restore your laughter and your joy. We ask this in the name of Jesus our Lord, who came here, lived here, served here, died here, rose here, and raises us. It's in his name that we pray. Amen.